Hi, welcome. In this video, we are going to talk about the inventory module of TranZact. Let's begin. So first of all, let us take a look at different types of items that are being used by companies. So we'll take manufacturing company for an example, right? So the different types of materials are input material, output material, process material or semi-finished good, scrap material, and capital goods. So the input material are the items that are purchased by the company to make finished goods. So these are of two types. So one is raw materials, other is consumables. So raw materials are the main materials that the company used to make the output materials. And consumables are the auxiliary items that typically are used for the making of finished goods. So these items do not go into the finished good as such, but are used while making the finished goods. Output materials of finished goods are the items that are produced by any company. The processed material or semi-finished goods are the intermediate products that the company produces while making the finished goods. Scrap materials are the unwanted materials that are produced in the process. And capital goods are the items which are used in production, but they do not get consumed during production. For example, big machines, or the factory, or the different units in the factory that are used in making the finished good. Some companies also use the term bought out parts. So these items are those which they buy directly from other companies and fit into their finished goods, and they don't manufacture it themselves. Okay, so let us take an example of the materials that we discussed in the previous slide. Suppose there is a company which manufactures boilers. So boiler is the finished good. And for making boilers, they have to purchase steel plates and tubes. So these are the raw materials. So they directly go into the boiler. And they process the material using lathe machine. So lathe machine is the capital good. So for producing 1 unit of boiler, it's not like certain units of lathe machines are used, right? So they get wear and tear over time. The company also uses welding rods to make finished goods. So you can't find welding rods in the finished good as such, but they are used during the production. So these are the consumables. A boiler drum is the semi-finished good. So it's the intermediary step where the boiler drum is made, and then it's used to make the boiler. And during this whole processing, a lot of scrap material is generated. So they are essentially unwanted parts that are generated during the process. Okay, so inventory module is one of the most important module of TranZact, along with the transaction module. So if you ask any company or owner of a company what is the biggest challenge, so 90% of them are going to say that tracking inventory is one of the biggest problems in their company. The main reason why inventory management is challenged is, first of all, even naming items is difficult for these companies. So a company typically have used thousands of material, right? So having proper nomenclature of each material is very critical. So people typically, what the tendency is that they name the material whatever they like in the system. Then a single material can be called by 2 or 3 different names by different people in the company. So that also creates a lot of hassle. Then one of the biggest issue is that people typically don't update the stock of these items in the system on a real-time basis. So they will issue material from the store and then forget to update the quantity. So this also creates a lot of discrepancies. And finally, there is a issue of leakage and pilferage in this company. So people might throw away material which can still be used, or there can be cases where theft is there. So all these things also create a lot of challenge for the companies to manage inventory. Okay, so in TranZact, we have a concept called store. So store, you can assume store to be a physical location where companies keep items. So suppose a company has a factory in which they have a dedicated room, right? So we can call it a store. So a company can have multiple stores in one location. So for example, in a big factory, there can be 2 or 3 different rooms, and they want to keep a track of what materials are there in each room. So then each room becomes a store. Or they can have multiple stores in different locations as well. So whenever a company creates a profile on TranZact, there are two default stores added to their profile. One is the main stock store and another is reject store. So typically those items which they want to throw away, they put into a reject store. So in our system, there are two types of store. One is the normal store, another is the reject store. And all the items in normal store add up to the stock of that items. All the items in the reject, all the quantity in the reject store add up to the reject quantity of that material. And also items can be transferred from one store to another stores, right? So for example, a company manufactures fridge and washing machine both. So they want to keep a track of raw materials that they use to make fridge and use to make washing machine separately. So they will have a raw material store for fridge separately and raw material store for washing machine separately. Both of them can have common items, mind it. It's not like if a material is kept in one store, it cannot be kept in another store. So both the stores can have same material, and you can also transfer stock between these two stores as well. And similarly, they will have a finished goods store separately for fridge and washing machine. Okay, so let's talk about how companies add items in TranZact. So this is the inventory homepage in TranZact. If I click over here and you can add a single item from here. So there are certain compulsory fields like an item ID, item name. So you can also have auto series in item ID. Then there is a unit of measurement, item category. There are various other fields. So these fields depend on the stage of the company. So if a company has signed up for the first time, so many fields won't be visible. Only certain key fields will be visible. The other fields such as minimum stock level, maximum stock level, drawing number, etc. come when these companies move to advanced stages. Companies can also define their own fields over here, that extra field, what they want, what is the type, and that field is also visible here in the form itself. In this slide, we are going to talk about different types of item pricing. So whenever companies deal with a item, it's very important for them to know that what's the price of the items that are there in the stock, right? So for example, in this table, we have shown various transactions for a particular item X. So the company bought certain item on 1st Jan, then again they bought certain quantity on 14th Jan, then on 5th March they again bought, 18th April they sold some quantity. So like this, we have shown the table for the different transactions, and we'll find out the cost of the items that is in stock by various methods. So there are four main methods of calculating the price of the stock. One is default price, then FIFO price, then average price, and finally in-last price. So let's take a look at them one by one. So default price is essentially the price that is entered by the user in the system. So there's no complicated calculation as such involved. Suppose while defining the item X, the user had said that the price of the item is typically 100 per unit, then that's the default price of the item. Next, FIFO price. FIFO price is essentially first in, first out price. So what it means is that if certain items is bought in a sequence and the items are sold, then the items that were bought earlier will be sold first. So in this example over here, we can see that items were bought on 1st Jan, 14th Jan, 5th March, and it was sold on 18th April. So the 4 units that was sold on 18th April will come from the units that were bought on 1st Jan, 3 units, and 1 unit from that bought on 14th Jan. So that is called FIFO method. Now, the pricing based on this FIFO method is that, first of all, on 1st Jan, the stock value is 300 rupees because you bought 3 items at 100 per unit. Then on 14th Jan, you bought 5 at 80 rupees. So the total cost is now 5 into 80, which is 400. The earlier was 300, so total is 700. And then dividing it by the total quantity in stock, that is 8, it's 87.5. Similarly, we calculate the average, the FIFO price on 5th March. However, on 18th April, when we are selling the 4 items, so when the 4 items were sold, now the items that is remaining in stock is 4 items from 14th Jan and 2 items from 5th March. So that is how averaging that, the answer that will come is 93.33. So you can do it manually and verify. So that's how FIFO pricing is calculated. Now, average pricing is calculated on the basis of average price of the inventory. So for example, the same thing, 1st Jan, 14th Jan till 5th March, the average pricing is, so total stock is 10 and total stock value is 940. So average price is 94. You can see over here that averages and FIFO pricing are same because nothing has been sold yet. As soon as we sell on 18th April 4 items, the remaining stock is still having the same average price. So we assume that when 4 items were sold, even though it was sold for 150, but the selling price was 150 per unit, but the price of the inventory is 94 per unit. So that's why it's still remaining same. And then again, you bought 6 items at 120. So over here, how it is calculated is that currently 6 items are present at 94 and you bought 12 at 107. So the average price is 106 the average, so you had 6 items at 94 and you bought 6 items at 120. So the average price is 107. That's how you got 107 over here. And finally, the in-last price. So in-last price is essentially the price at which you last bought the item. So at every stage, we just check what was the last buying price. That is called the in-last price. So I would suggest you to go through this table and at every stage calculate the average price, FIFO price and in-last price and see whether you are getting the same answer or not. Because this is sometimes a bit tricky and people get confused a lot. So now let's take a look at various operations that we can do in the inventory module. So first is the manual adjustment. So manual adjustment is essentially the steps that we need to take so that we can change the current stock of a particular item. So typically this is used by people sitting in store who have to issue a material or they want to take back certain material. So over here in this example, let us change the stock of chemical 3. Say suppose I want to add 2 kgs of chemical 3 and I just put in a comment saying that returned from factory. So as soon as I click save, the quantity has now increased to 10. So this is a manual adjustment. If we want to do it in bulk, that also we can do from here. From here I can do add stock and I can add multiple items from here and then change their quantity. Next is stock transfer. So stock transfer is essentially moving certain stock of a product from one store to another. So from store to store. So I can say move from store to FG store to RM store a particular item. And its stock in this store will reduce and the stock in the other store will increase. So this is stock transfer. Physical stock reconciliation. So when we talk about physical stock reconciliation, it's a step that every company takes in a periodical basis. So what they do is they go to their warehouse, they count each of the items they have and how much stock for each item they have. And they take a printout from the system that what should be the stock according to the system and what is the actual stock. And then they see a difference. This is done to find out whether people in the company are entering the data correctly on time or not. Is there any leakage or theft or not? And once they do this, they check the difference and then they upload the difference on the onto the system on TranZact. So over here, you can upload the file in the TranZact saying that what is the difference with the current stock, and we do a physical stock reconciliation. So this is a very vital process, and this typically tells them that this gives them an idea how good the system is being used in their company. So whenever you do a stock adjustment, it goes to inventory approval. So no stock is changed in the system without approving the inventory, right? So these are all the pending approvals, inventory approvals in the company, and these are the approved ones. So the inventory approval can be either manual or auto. So over here you can see the inventory approval is set auto for this company. So the one that the manual adjustment that we did is shown here, right? So we added 2 quantities. So it has been approved because we have set it as auto approval. Now, if we have to see what the history, the stock adjustment history of any item, what we do is we go into the item, we open the item, and we can see that what all adjustments have happened, what date, which user did this, what was the reason, everything can be found out here. So this is used frequently by companies to see the history of the items. Okay, so in our system, we also have an option of adding barcodes. So the items that I just now adjusted, chemical 3, I added 2 items, right? So if I want to add a barcode in that item, I can go over there. And this is the page where I can add a barcode. So suppose these 2 items, so I want to add a barcode. So let us say bar 001. So if I click here, so you can see bar 001, 002, and I can also add the manufacturing date. So I put today's date, expiry date, say I put some later date, and I can just copy it. So these are the 3 things that we can add. And then in the system, this item that got returned has a barcode associated with it. So now suppose next time when we are pushing this product out of the system, I can add the barcode, and when I click on it, I get a drop down saying that this bar 1 and bar 2 will come in the drop down, and I can select it that, okay, I have now pushed the bar 1 and bar 2 out of the system. So that's about barcode. Okay, so now let us talk about inventory dashboard. So over here, you can see that you can quickly check, okay, negative stock, how many items are negative stock, how many have low stock, and how many have excess stock. So I can just click on it and it give me the filter accordingly, right? And if I want to take a detailed look at my inventory, so the overview of the inventory, I click on the inventory dashboard. So inventory dashboard tells me, gives me some vital information about the stock valuation, current stock valuation, and it shows me that it was last updated on 3rd Jan 2022. So I can refresh it and update it for today. I can also see the stock valuation by FIFO and in average price, the 2 types of pricing we talked about. Then I can also check the top selling items in last 3 months, top bought item in last 3 months, and excess stock and low stock. Over here, this graph tells me that how many have negative stock, how many have low stock, how many are at reorder level. So reorder level we have defined as minimum stock level plus 20%. This is the optimum stock, and then there are high stock and excess stock. So this page gives me overview about the inventory. So people typically, to take a quick look at the inventory, they come to this page. Now we can also talk about vendor mapping. So vendor mapping, from here actions, I can go to vendor mapping. So what does vendor mapping mean? So suppose there is a company who is buying an item regularly from say 3 different suppliers, and for each supplier they buy it at a different price, right? So what they do is that in this vendor mapping, they map the item to each of the suppliers and say what is the price for each supplier. So now in purchase order, when they select the particular supplier and select the particular item, this price is fetched from this vendor mapping table, right? So over here you can see the product mapping, which is essentially company, the item, and the price. And you can also map the payment terms, that okay, for this customer my payment term is say 30 days, for another customer my payment term is 60 days. So that you can map here, and while creating the sales order, the payment term will automatically be fetched. So vendor mapping is mostly used by traders or companies who buy or sell a particular product with various customers or suppliers. So those companies use vendor mapping very frequently. So this is about inventory module, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.